Hello there. Thanks for joining. Euro versus traditional. Hi, I'm Bert Sarkinen, owner of Aero Timber Framing and author of The Art of Hybrid Timber Framing. Thanks for joining. Euro, one thing that I've really always been attracted with Euro style really hews back to one of my early projects. It was actually a 2-day remodel. And 2 days for a remodel might sound a little bit drastic or extreme, but if you consider all the time that goes into it beforehand, and then the owners went on a vacation for a couple of days, and we moved in and made a bunch of dust, got these big beams in the ceiling, and this was a retro to really fix some space and volume imbalances. And the lady was the driving force, and she really was gravitated towards Euro style. And one of the things that really I find fascinating and is really enjoyable whenever I get involved with Euro style designs is working with implementing or integrating old type of joinery. So for this particular project, we had I don't have pictures here for you, but there were some lighting problems where the beams wanted to be these box trusses with kind of some nice ornate things in there and the hand-hewn textures. There was an island that needed light as well as a sink. So one of the things that we did, if you can picture a box, if you can picture a box truss, and so we have our pieces here, right? And we had kind of a king post with some flared arches coming out. I don't remember all of the details. Of course, a through tenon was necessary. But at one point, say the island is down here, we came out the side of this beam here with almost like a little diving board. And it had this arch and then a light pendant hang down. And so you get that light centered just right where you want it to be. And on the back side, if we're looking at a cross section of that bottom cord, this was the pendant or the support for the light. And there's a through tenon that came through, and then the wedge. So a big hole in that tenon, a wedge, just tighten that up, and any shrinkage in time, you could tighten that. And we had a lighting channel in the top. But this just screams Euro style. That's one of the things that I really like about Euro. Working in those details and a lot of that old joinery and techniques that way. Regarding traditional, traditional, some people think of it as vanilla and boring and humdrum. Other people see it as tried and true, safe, secure, stability. When I work with traditional styles, one of the things that I really love about that is similar to if you compare dishes like you would eat. Some dishes are spicy and just really wild flavors and over-the-top combinations, and that's good, delicious. And other dishes use almost the minimal amount of spice, the minimal amount of ingredients with just the right touches, and you're dealing with small, nuanced flavors and spices, all that, and it's delicious as well. That would be traditional. When we're working with the timbers, a lot of times we're reducing, we're taking out webs. You'll see in some of these photos we're going to get to that sometimes just removing the webs and taking out a little clutter kind of hits this like that is traditional. And it's not me saying what is going to be the best. It's you. I'm just kind of the guide helping you make these decisions. And we're going to give you a flavor of that as we delve into more on European as well as traditional. So there's going to be a lot of photos and we're going to cover a lot of ground. So what you want to do is listen with 2 tracks because you're going to see things that you like and dislike with all these styles. And you're also going to notice that these styles and all these pictures we're going to show you fail to fall into one category only. It just doesn't happen. Everybody's unique, and this is part of the fun that we get with every client that comes in the door. I just love it. Everyone is unique, and so taking that, it helps creativity. There's always this little burst of joy when things come together. It's a lot of fun, and we're going to bring you there today. So here we've got an overview for you, just like the previous webinars on this. This general characteristics, I'm going to try not to make it so dry, but there's a lot of information, but I want to just kind of see what sticks, bring it to your attention, and later we're going to try to, in the showcase breakdowns, we'll try to bring that back to where some of these takeaways are sticking together. We're going to get introspection and trade-off decisions. Perhaps if there's one skill in prepping for the building process, it'd be number 1 or 2, and we'll get into that as well. Okay, and then determining your preference. I started to say I got sidetracked. As you're doing this, as you're looking at all these pictures, watch or listen for things you like and things that you dislike, as well as there's going to be universal truths, design truths that just work for either practicality and function or beauty and space and volume and magnetism, just good vibes, right? And so listen on 2 tracks with that as we go through all these pictures. We've got a bonus at the end here for the live viewers, and we're going to have a follow-up question and answer as well. And with the Q&A, here are some questions we're going to cover. You know, does my builder speak my language? And I'm running this by you so that you can perhaps, you know, if you've got a question or whatever, want to email lucas@aerotimber.com. That would be a great way to get the question to us so we can get it answered for you. How can I make style decisions with more confidence? What if my style is all over the map? What if me and my spouse have different, like way different ideas of what good looks like as far as what we want? Does my builder speak my language? You know, these are all things that are good to think about, so I'm priming the pump for you. Okay, so now we're going to compare these 2 styles, and we're going to start kind of on a higher level. We're going to bring it down and bring it down again. So 3 levels here just to give you a feel of this, okay? So with traditional architectural styles and labels that have been used in the past that more or less align with what you might expect in traditional, the colonial, federal, Georgian, prairie, farmhouse, Romanesque. Of all of these 3 speak to what I intuitively have seen and known most. European, there's kind of a few different styles in European, but so Tudor, this is where you've got the framework visible on the outside, and you see like the white mud and wattle infill, and as well as, you know, the French country, some of that, really steep roofs with that, as well as the chateau. The Gothic, you know, a lot of heavy stone with some wood in the ceiling. Victorian, as it's very ornate, really small and steep, and Mediterranean. Okay, so those are kind of the general labels that are bandied around within the design and architect's world. Okay, so when we're here, I started to wander into this area for a European here. The steep slopes, the generous decor, and the vertical emphasis. I was there already. A lot of little nooks, crannies, bays, gingerbread, rounded corners, ornate windows, overhangs that build out. Sometimes the wall will have skirts that come out. You know, gingerbread, generous decor, all really kind of the nuts and bolts of what entails a Victorian or a European style. One other piece of this, it's a little bit of an outlier, is there's so many old barns in Europe, and old buildings. And so some of those early pieces are less ornate than what Euro is kind of defined as. So there's kind of a little outlier mix in there that you might like, that might resonate with you. With traditional, stable, secure, predictable. Those are big words for traditional, and tend to be boxy. Maybe some dormers, white. The colors, of course, aren't going to be real bold or outlandish. They're going to stay within a certain spectrum. So you're going to see a lot of whites. You're going to see brick. You're going to see just a lot of things that have been used over time and are just feel right. So clean lines, simple shapes, usually a 2-story. Don't know why. Usually is. Modest adornment, and the symmetrical part is almost a hallmark. Door centered, little roof, window, dormer. You kind of get the drift. That is level 2, kind of away from the labels. Now we're just describing it as we would to a friend. Now we're going to talk about the timbers. When you get to timber design, what is the difference between traditional and European? So with Euro, you've got steep triangles. That's the roofs, and knee braces a lot of times will go steeper. Pronounced curves, a lot of times the space is tight and soaring, kind of inspiring. You can get a cozy low volume, especially this is that outlier I was referring to in old Europe. Sometimes you can have like an exquisite restaurant just jammed in this basement of an old building that has real low ceilings, but the vibe and everything is just fantastic. So that's kind of the outlier of the European, and in this case, not going to be very ornate, but yet very luxury. Medium timber sizing for both length and girth. In the days of the European, when it was really the rage, that was a building way to build back in medieval times. The forests weren't keeping up, so builders figured out how to use shorter and shorter pieces. And so that's kind of a little bit of a driver with that style. And with traditional, I want to ignore this right here at first. We're going to come back to it later in photos, but ignore that for right now. So very symmetrical, average, your slope is going to be somewhere, 5 to 10, 12. Maybe sometimes a 12, but really average. Medium timber sizing, and the detailing is going to be sparse, but you might have some just little accents. It's going back to the nuanced, finding the beauty and power and nuance and really enjoying that and exploring that. With the soft arches, normally arches really don't play into traditional per se, but yet we see it getting used with choices people make time and time again, just because maybe we want a little bit of a frilly flower type of thing, right? It's really soften something. That's the beauty of you being unique. You're going to really just have fun with this, and we get to have fun right along with you. Okay? Now we're going to talk about trade-offs. Earlier I mentioned that trade-offs are perhaps the most important or the second most important thing you can do to prepare yourself for a good journey, getting timbers that resonate and just fit for what you want to invest, and the whole gamut. So trade-offs. So what could be more important than trade-offs? What could be more important than trade-offs? We just wrote an article, and it talks about business insight, using business insight to get a simple strategy to get a timber frame that just nails it all the way around, right? And the one thing before that really has to do with, shameless book plug, warning, this right here, chapters 1 through 5, in the article, it just makes a case for before you can effectively deal with trade-offs, you really got to understand why and what. What are you about? Why are you doing this? There's really some beautiful, simple, revealing exercises in chapters 1 through 5 that can help the visionaries, the owners, the people who are driving projects get some insight to see what are we trying to do? What can we say no to? And that is trade-offs. Once that, these guys are answered here, you know what you're about, you know why you're doing it, you can deal with trade-offs. And the best thing with trade-offs as you're doing this is to figure out, you really want to focus on what you're saying no to. Most of us don't want to, bam, close the door on options. We want to keep options open. Why? I believe it is the fear of loss. It's something that puts our teeth on edge. So as we're going through these next continuums, keep that in mind. And the way the continuum works is the first thing you do is you look at which extreme, if you had to take one or the other, which extreme will you take if forced? In this example, we're using a truck or a vehicle. So in this very simplistic, it's an example. Why? Well, they want a truck to haul stuff. But from time to time, so, say a 1-ton truck is fairly good, got a little towing capacity, a little hauling capacity. Okay, so what are you saying no to? Well, there's not going to be huge loads. A 1 ton has limited capacity. It's not going to have great fuel economy. It's going to be somewhat expensive, especially if it's a diesel and a rig that will just be a good hauler, but not over the top. And it's going to be kind of a pain in the butt to drive. Parking, blah, 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 blah. It's a big rig going down the road. So, but if I'm okay with all that, I write it out. And one thing about making a no list is when you write it out, it's okay. You kind of like see the demon for what it is rather than this kind of a fuzzy, like, I want options. And you say, well, I'm okay saying no to that. Boom, done. And so that is, if you can get clear about what you're saying no to, all the building decisions you're going to get into are going to be a piece of cake relatively, or compared to as if you don't do that and are just kind of wandering through the forest, kind of getting beaten this way and that way with all these decisions and gizmos and bright shiny objects and colors and everything else you're going to do. So make it fun. Get your head on straight. Answer why, answer what. Learn to make a no list. You'll be good. Okay, so with Euro and traditional, which of these two, if you had to pick one or the other, predictable and direct, which is traditional, inspiring and stylish, European, Victorian, a lot of character that way. If you had to choose one or the other, which would it be? Predictable and direct? Got your answer? Okay, now choose something here. Are you smack dab in the middle? I suggest that you try to avoid that. But even if you are and you've chosen one of these, when you get to making your decisions, you can say, okay, yeah, I'm here, but now I know that I tend to, if I got to go one way or the other, I'm going towards more stylish. Okay, and then after you've made your choice here, you can say, what am I saying no to? Why do I want it? Blah, blah, blah. What am I saying no to? And you might need a bigger, more room to do it, but grab your paper and go with it. Okay, next question. Straight and simple. Gonna say the same thing. We got traditional here, Euro here, straight and simple, curvy, ornate. Which one? Are you at gunpoint? Make a choice. Which one are you going to take? Might be tough, but choose one or the other. Now, find where you're at here. You may be clear over here on the extreme. That's fine. Nothing wrong with it. Just be clear about it. Understand why. Write down what you're saying no to. And the last one, modest and practical. Okay, make the decision. Must do it in the next 3 seconds. Uno, dos, tres. Got it? Great. And then where are we at here? Why? And what are you saying no to? And you'll work through the no list and the why thing later. Okay, so we are into Euro here. This is the before and after. This particular project was a lot of fun. And maybe the thing that was the most fun about it, we had people who witnessed the before and after, and they said, that's not even the same house. We cheated. Pretty rewarding. As far as, clear my screen here. So let's talk about the attributes of the Euro style here. You can see as you look at this particular house, it's rather interesting because the house itself waxes traditional, right? Aside from the turned post and the little frillies right here, it looks awful symmetrical to me. We got a door in the center. We go bing, bing, bing with the dormers, all the same size. Looks rather traditional. Yet when you come over here, that falls, in my opinion, in the Euro camp. So let's take a look at some of the things that happened here from the moving it from traditional to Euro. The biggest thing in my mind is in the timbers, the stone, these pieces here really get, I mean, that could be, just blown up. That could fit in an old church and really look good in that home. The timber sizing, a little bit of Northwest influence here, a little bit bigger than I would say for Euro in general, yet timber sizing has to feel right. And then there's also the joinery considerations as well. But so even with that, you got the curved knee braces and enough pieces and ornate enough that this really is waxes Euro. One particular thing that happened with this job right here, you'll notice these peaks right here no longer align. And this window that was uniform with all those, this is the bathroom behind here. That window shrunk up. Why? The answer is to really do any justice with this porch. I'm going to clear this here. To do any justice with this porch, you can imagine what if we'd have tried to stay below that window here and tried to work with trying to make a truss or any kind of an impact with a low pitch here. It's going to be really tough. And so by raising this window up here, we can bring the peak of this roof up. And now we've got something to work with. And then the beams come out and they break up this gutter line as well, rather than having the gutter line. Let's try it again here. If sometimes you'll see designs where the gutter line just comes along straight and just makes a turn up, continues over. Here the gutter is dropped, so it creates a space, allowed us to go with even a steeper roof, which all blends towards that Euro. So there's a lot of other little nuanced things and more to that story there for you, but that's kind of a glimpse into the Euro thing. One other piece on this, this is here only and not there nor there. Why? A few reasons. We did try it over here with modeling. You can try all kinds of goodies. We did try it. but it felt forced. And this dormer we made bigger as well. That's where that peak lifted up. We just had some false walls framed in when we did that. But so this dormer is bigger, and so having something more there separated it from the other two dormers, and it also joined then forces with the steep roof here. When you see the picture, that's what your eye sees at first. So it creates a visual hierarchy, just boom, you get to see the front door, that's where you're supposed to look. Then you get to, eye flows out, enjoys all the other pieces, bada boom, you're off and running. Okay. Here's a frontal picture of that. And you can see the hierarchy, how that just really commands attention right here. A little closer picture of the joint and the through tenon. Really was used a lot in the European days. And a lot of, it's a strength thing too. I think we've covered that a little bit in our Avoid a Structural 98-Pound Weakling series. And then here's a close-up of the decorative gable end detail. Okay, here's another before and after. Maybe kind of hard to see, so I'm going to just zoom this in. Here's what we started with. And you can see it's kind of a neat, unique design. I don't think from knowing where we ended up, that this was, you know, when we're starting with ideas, we just don't know what we don't know. And this was kind of something that just kind of popped out and just really resonated for a few reasons, but never didn't last. It wasn't really what the people were after. But that's part of the process. And I would say don't feel bad. In fact, expect that when you're moving forward with what is the best style for you and what's going to resonate the most and be the best solution. Move up here to the after. You see the roof lines change quite a bit. So I'll spend a little bit of time with the roof line and then talk about the double post as it relates to Euro style. But the roof lines are a big deal. We do this a lot. It's one of the biggest, heaviest lifting tricks we use to make space work for timbers. So if you're a designer and know that your clients want some timbers, well, we specialize in making the roof lines work for the timbers. So if you want to save yourself a little bit of time, you can have a computer generated roof and we'll kind of do the work to figure out what's going to go. It's kind of what we do and what we enjoy. And if that works with your program, that'd be kind of cool. But the roof line changed, the posts are all the same. So in the previous picture, just looking at this area right here, that's the center there. We don't move it up. You can see there was the center roof before and then the two gables earlier, right? And what we've got here is we just eliminated two gables, did a Dutch hip, and created these gables that play with each other here. So the main one is here, step back. And so 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 is really a common thing with interior design, architecture, creating a theme. Things come in threes and generally odd numbers. Sometimes we'll jump to 5 if that's what fits. And it's not to say that 4 doesn't fit sometimes. It's always testing with quantity of ideas, and you just get to wiggle in and see what works. And the design truths that come through help us get to something that's visually pleasing and that fits the bill for someone's style faster, but it still is a lot of trial and error, mostly error. So now it's about the double post here. This really is kind of in my mind, this whole piece here with the two soldiers standing side by side, you've got a piece that comes in that gives a place for the beam to launch, and it just kind of builds to this flow, ornate, artistic flow, which to me, again, it's just very European. And there's some control knobs here with this piece, that little side piece. This particular project doesn't have stone, they're just wood bases, but you can have stone around that. And that's a control knob you can use to adjust the ratios and beauty. In this case, this particular project was very well within the golden ratio to where we didn't have to use the stone or anything to kind of trick your eye into seeing a golden ratio. But these can be lowered too, lowered or raised, depending to create the right amount of massing and volume up in here. Here's a picture of the detail right at the gable end. And here's another angle with a different entry for ADU or granny flats, accessory dwelling. Again, we just mimicked it was pretty easy. The proportions were good. The context for the big picture were all set. It's just a matter of getting the timbers right and then playing with the nuances of where these fall. And again, just that build up to that nice flow. Here's one that really portrays those control knobs very well. Another thing that you might, so Euro, we've got the stone, typically it's rich colors. When that's typically where people land if they're gravitating towards this. So for example, I'm going to spend a little bit of time with the control knobs, and this is just a universal truth type of thing. So a golden ratio, a rectangle, and a spiral, it ends up being, so you have a perfect 5 parts to 5 parts to 3 parts. That's your golden rectangle. All right. And so if you're looking at this, what you can kind of do is, this is more intuitive than anything, but if you're kind of wondering, you can play with it. So you look at kind of the mass of where that is, and what is the stone doing? And it's not an exact science, but you kind of look into 5 to 3. Does that kind of match? And the stone can go higher or lower. And these pieces, when you can come down the post, for example, say this was a real low pitch, we might have put this control knob, we might have locked it down here. That way we would have had a little bit of room to put in a decent arch, to have a little bit of room to do webs. Follow what I mean? So that's a really handy thing. But that golden ratio, just being able to work with those are a little bit finer control knobs. The bigger ones, if we're not constrained by concrete in the ground, these can move in or out, and as well as the roof line change. So there's really kind of a peek behind the curtains of what we do on a big level for all of that. If this were very prominent from the river, this is overlooking a river, I'd bet dollars to donuts. In that case, you would have had stone that either came up to here for the bottom, or else the stone coming that high right there, with a little more emphasis on how it looked from the exterior, because you'd probably have a yard and whatnot going to the river, as well as people going by. It's kind of like put your best foot forward. But in this case, it wasn't necessary. It's all from the top and turned out good. So here's a picture that really resonates with Euro, and not so much because of the timbers. I'll talk about this in a little bit here, but mainly just because of the light. And then the timber, see this steep curve, that elegance, that really, and then the colors and the lighting, more than anything, really speak Euro. One of the things that does not jive with Euro classification See the girth of this beam here? It's pretty tall. That's a pretty big beam here, as well as the posts and different things. But you've got a lot of things playing into it. The stucco is one thing that there's not a lot of texture in that. So that's part of it. And you see this thing kind of slopes down the roof there. So a lot of little things come into play, which make it look Euro. Here you've got another picture from the other side. And the strongest shape here by far is this. That's really what sets a tone. It's really weird how some pieces, like we talked about in the previous webinar with classic, how classic, when you get the long, somewhat moderated slope with the trusses, how that really is a strong piece that makes a case for being in the classic category. The same thing here with these pieces that are a little more vertical and kind of just an elegant swoop flow. That is quintessential European. Here's another one that goes back to a little bit less refined, but yet European all day long, because it was done so much when timber framing was the dominant building style. This here is Tudor. You might remember that from the start. And so this was done with the siding and was not built with timbers. Back in the day, the timbers would be structured, then you'd come back with kind of this clay and straw, they called it wattle, and you would infill between all the timbers with kind of this like built-in-place mortar type stuff. And so that's where you see these old European buildings. You'll see that all the time. Germany, they're all over. In fact, I hope to make a trip there in the future, tour some of the old timber framing. Be kind of fun. But and this is the before and after. So I'm going to zoom in here for you so you can kind of see it a little better. So that's a Tudor all day long. So still Euro, and then it moved to kind of a Euro in its own right over here. See, the Jowl Post is one thing that is an old European style of joinery that they brought things narrow where it didn't need to be, but because of the joinery at the post, they call it a Jowl Post, it moves up. The webs being here push it towards European. If the webs were gone, you might say, well, hey, there's your classic, your strong classic, right? So, yeah, of course, you're right. No argument there. One thing happening here is the tenon, the through tenon, taken in context, all together. You've got the high piece over here, the pieces there in the stone. Taken all together, it pushes it towards Euro. And here's the interior of another residence we did. You see the Jowl Post here. And this one here, even though it's simple, that could be classic, but that truss style here with just the bottom cord going through, you can see it over here in this entry. That really has a strong linkage to Euro, in my opinion. You've seen it a lot in old designs. Another thing, just like the Tudor style here, you've got this on this gable end wall here between the dining and the great room with all that infill, and then the pieces, it really turned out good. This particular, in the original design, this right here was going to be sheetrock all the way down and have a wall between the two, but the owner got to thinking as it was going up, and he came up with a great idea. There's some little corbelled little pieces that kind of build out and support that beam on the other side and tie really well together, just accentuate that European feel. Here's some more photos of the different angle of the same truss. This right here, all that detailing, that joinery, strongly in the Euro class. classic would have that be that ornate. Here's another view from this gable end, and you see the king post and the arches come together there as well. Okay, so now we're going to move into traditional. This is again the nuance enjoyment, really enjoying that small touches and the simple elegance or the beauty of that. With this particular project, we had, just like the other one in the previous seminar, this originally had all three gables the same size. Door in the center, windows, same. And we're still solidly in the traditional camp here, but we've changed it a bit. We made this bigger, so you're creating that hierarchy, something to say, welcome, here's the front door, here's what you look at first, here's where we expect you to walk, your eyes catch it. And so that was really neat to work with. This has traditional, but there's a heavy blend of another style, which is rustic. So the timbers are bigger than you might find on a normal traditional style as we talk. Here's a project. This is a really big project in relation to the size of the project. Timbers were not a big piece of this. And one reason that this is a little unique here with this style of truss with the taper on the bottom cord, but really in context and the whole thing with style, the reason that this feels more like traditional is there's pieces that you notice, but they're not in your face. Just pieces here and there. There's some pretty big beams right there in the entry supporting some stone. And those are a little unique. There's a twist of industrial modern with some rusted metal brackets and some posts in here. I don't think I've got the pictures with that, but what I'm trying to say is that your style is going to be unique, and that is really the fun of this whole process with hybrid timber framing. You can just really get expressive and without too much work, create something that really resonates with you and who you are and the why and the what that we covered earlier. Outdoor patio overlooking a river. What could be finer? Great place to hang out. And here, when we're talking about traditional, whenever I see straight, that's the picturesque king truss, right? King truss can come with arches, different things, but when it's those right there, the 1, 2, 3, that really said, hey, we're waxing traditional. Here's a picture from a different angle. Now you'll notice on this one, the knee braces are a little bit more European, partly for view, partly for just how it felt, and they're curved. And that was with the owner's involvement, with their choice in doing this. So, and I believe that they had probably had at least an option for curving one side, but this is where it gravitated to. This is where it started to resonate, all in context with everything considered, the why and the what, and what you're saying no to. All of that came down to here. Here's a picture from below. There's kind of a water feature down here. Still a cool space below as well. So really a lot of fun. You'll notice here there's a prow. Whenever you see a prow, what does that tell you? Rustic. But again, in context, you look at the rest of the place. There's a pool and there's the glass rail and everything there. You're looking at context. What's going on? And now they have to be perfect with a label or a name or a category or a style. The point is communication. That's, and I'm going to come back to that in the Q&A. I'm going to come back to that communication piece and am I speaking your language, and talk a little bit more about that. This one here, very traditional. Owners for sure personified the traditional mindset. One of the things that it's interesting how people appreciate timber framing and hybrid timber framing in different ways. This particular owner, we really used a different type of joinery that showcased the pegs and how things went together, and didn't try to hide some of the shrinkage, because that is what was really fascinating to him. And with this particular project as well, of course, we've got the 1, 2, 3 that scream traditional, but she was asking, well, do you think I can put some curves in? I mean, nothing else is, but kind of feels like it would look all right. And that's, well, let's put them in and see what you think. And, you know, that's what they ended up doing, softening it just a little bit. And that's that nuanced personalization. Really a good thing. Here's another project which could be made as a craftsman. I don't know. Maybe I messed up putting this picture here. So I'm looking at this. As I'm looking at it, there's not the 1, 2, 3. And if we look a little bit closer here, when I see this right here, see that stepped king post? I think I blew it. I think I put this in traditional, and it really waxes more craftsman. It is traditional in the way that it's not way overpowering and you know, following some tried and true balanced designs and that sort of thing. But I think I messed up for you, so put that one in craftsman. Okay, the last slide I want to show you here is interesting in that here's the before, so you get a good look at it here. And let's move to the after here. And you'll notice that, wow, that's, you know, cool, man. But now if we take this apart a little bit, so over here, what do you see? 1, 2, 3. Okay. You see brick, which could be classic or traditional. You do see some curves. Over here, you see something that might even be modern, or that big classical, you know, swoop. This different roof here, and then you've got a pergola over here that could really match a lot of styles. You've got the curved knee braces. You know, so what's going on? And what's going on is your style is unique, this style is unique, and looking at things holistically, following the process, looking at, you know, keeping the context in mind, the big picture, the what, the why, the trade-offs, it all comes together as part of the process. So your style is unique. That's the takeaway message for this slide. Attitude questionnaire. Okay, so what we're going to do for you is, with the hardcover book here on page 140, so this is the end of section 2 that talks all about the 7 styles you have available to you to mix and match. And I don't want you to try to land in one style. Of all the quizzes that have come in off the internet, there has been maybe no one has ever landed in one camp. One person came really close one time. It's like, whoa, what happened here? So even with the style quiz that's online, it's about communication. It's not a silver bullet. It's not infallible. It's working your way into where I understand what blue means to you, you understand what blue means to me. Kind of a push and pull, give and take. So we have right here, example A for personalization of, I appreciate orchestrated artistry. Some of my friends think my taste is too busy or ornate, but I find it to be very soothing. Okay, so that's A. Example B, to me, predictable means a safe, reliable, happy ending. The thought of choosing strong, bright colors almost gives me hives. I tend to change at a slower pace than most. Which of those two, if you had to choose one or the other, would be your pick? I think you figured out that here we have traditional, and over here we have Euro. So, you might write down kind of, if you had to choose one or the other, which one is most aligned with how you roll. And if you have that written down and you just kind of file it away, decisions coming down the pike are going to be a lot easier. Now here we have a rustic factor. This is a question I love to ask. I love the input, and it really helps people make decisions. So the way this works is, if you think about the project you have in mind, going from A to Z, from furniture, flooring, lighting, cabinets, stone, a gajillion different decisions you're going to make, and timbers being one of them that will have a big impact. We always say that if you can get the timbers aligned right, you don't have to work as hard with colors, painting, all kinds of other things to correct an imbalance of where you want to go. So overall, soup to nuts, A to Z, overall look and feel. 10 is a log cabin. 1 is a modern hospital. Where do you fall? Where on that spectrum do you fall? And if you're a 3, write down 3. If you're a 5, if you're a 7 and 8, doesn't really matter. But keep that in mind. It'll help you with decisions. And for myself, it really helps me interpret pictures you bring to me. It helps me interpret, what you're trying to say and communicate. And it just really gives me a good feel for how many timbers, for what size of timbers, geometric shapes, detailing, all of the above. Kind of a fun, fast, quick piece to triangulate where you want to go. And it just helps us deliver something that delights, fits what you want. So what is going on here? We've referred to the why and the what as for the chapters 1 through 5 here, really getting that down to where it's just solid. So we're talking about what this is, and going through your no list of what you're not going to do sometimes can get you a head start on that you don't want to build anything too jazzy, or you don't want to build anything too boring, or you don't want to build anything X, Y, or Z. That can really get you started with that what, but it's really a good exercise to describe what you're trying to achieve. And your decision, you don't even have to get too detailed with it. As you make more and more decisions, if you've got a big picture in your head and you're on the same page with whoever else is helping you make decisions, decisions don't have to be tussle and conflict and overwhelming and if you do this work from 1 through 5 with the little exercises, get that big picture bright. With that in mind, the little pictures as they come through, you just retreat back to what is a description of what I'm trying to accomplish. And the decisions kind of fall in your lap or become much easier to make. And then in combination with, after you've made the decision, you build out your no list, what you're saying no to, like we've talked about at the beginning of this webinar. Then you look everyone in the face and you say, yeah, I'm down with that. This is good. Decision done, move on. And unless some big surprising piece of information comes along that you don't know about yet, hey, that one's in the bank. It's gone. It's out of your life. Move on. So really powerful that way. So that's one thing I want you to really think about for moving forward is what? Get that piece solid. And right now, we're going to be launching this. It's ready for pre-order. If you go to the Aero Timber website, this and the guide, this guide is really a lot of fun. A lot more deeper introspection than the book. But you know, there's a ton of pictures. But we will order from the website. We're going to give you a little thank you, a little encouragement, sign it, and send it off to you. So it'd be really fun to do that for you. If you intend to do something with a building project or remodeling project where you know you want to influence the look and feel with some sort of exposed beams. Super good investment. Okay. Now, I believe that we are done. You're done for the day. You've done a great job. And if you want to go through the question and answers, we've got a little bit more. So earlier, I talked about communication. I'm going to touch on how do I know does my builder speak my language, as well as how do I know if we are speaking the same language, and who is we? That could be a spouse, other decision maker you're working with, could be a builder, could be just a service provider. Doesn't really matter. With the big pieces in play for what a building project, you're going to have a designer and a builder, and then we get called in for like the specialty contractor pieces as far as where to, you know, those bigger pieces moving. You know, you really want to have solid communication there. And so to answer these questions about the same language for you, I'm going to draw from my own experience. In other words, when I feel like I'm connecting well and I've modified or I've come to understand what heavy means for you, or what classic means for you, or what too airy or too light or too looming, all these different descriptive words, what they mean to you. When I feel like I've come there, what I look for is, are my suggestions and ideas, do they kind of either hit the mark or move towards the mark? And there will be a few outliers where it's, oh, splat, bad idea, it doesn't work. And there is no bad ideas, so I don't want to get too critical there, because quantity is more important than quality to get where you want to go. That's what I look for. That is really what is like, okay, things are moving forward. And I think that's what you want to look for too with whoever you're working with. Are you speaking the same language? And you may even modify your interpretation of heavy or too light or et cetera, understanding by how I'm using it. And so there's kind of this meeting of the minds, and then it gets easy to roll forward and communicate. An easy way to say it is if you were to say that, you know, Bert just kind of gets it. He understands what I want. Now that means that, okay, we're doing the same language, okay? And that's where I hope to be should we work together in the future. Next question. What if my style is different from my spouse's? That's a little bit of a loaded question. The quick answer is not a problem unless we have Mama Bear over here, Papa Bear over here, and there's a gulf between them. Not so much as the style preference isn't really the problem. It's more like if there's some deeper structural issues such as relationship, getting on the same page, working together, you know, building that emotional bank account, that sort of thing. If there's the deeper problems in there, we have seen some places or heard later that somebody built a beautiful place and blah, 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 but ugly was growing unchecked underneath within the relationship and actions and behaviors, that all the decisions and, you know, that just turned into a lot of conflict, and it kind of tipped the wagon over, and there's a divorce and the house sells, and it's like, You know, it's just like we had fun with the project, we did all this and that, and it's still cool, but it's like, ugh, it just takes the wind out of our sails a little bit. So, you know, that's a big thing. So, you know, if that's you, my sincere advice is to definitely hit the pause button, work on foundational issues and relationships and behaviors and thinking, and then move forward acquiring the beauty and putting your happiness on display with timbers, not before. That's my 2 cents. Okay. Okay, so what if I'm all over the map with my style? Not really a problem. What happens and with the process, you get to, it just comes together. That's really all I can say is that you've seen a lot of different examples in all these pictures. It really comes together. You follow the process, and little by little, things gel up, and it's like, yeah, this is cool. I'm down with that. This is going to be a good investment. And then years go by, and every time you walk through your entry or you're enjoying your coffee in the morning or you drive up to your home or office, it's like, cool. It's a long-lasting piece of art. I'm glad I did that. That is where you're going to end up. And it's a lot of fun. And we've had many experiences, many different scenarios, desires. It's been a fun ride, and it still is. It's just a lot of fun. Okay, popular timber frame styles. We mentioned there's 7 in the book, section 2. There's a summary at the back, and doing this will fortify your ability to speak a language, make things easier should you go through that, as well as give you ideas and clarity and so forth. So really good idea. Great tool to get your hands on with sections 1 through 5, or the whole book. And just again, this is kind of one of a kind. It is not a technical build. There's a history piece in the beginning. There's a piece on structural integrity, not avoiding a 98-pound weakling, and building tips, as well as joinery, terminology, and examples. Little pieces of technical things, but really, as you've seen the content of this webinar and the previous ones, it's about getting what you want. Who are you? What are you trying to achieve? And how do you get what you want? So I wouldn't worry about popular so much as listening with that track of what do you like and what do you dislike and what makes sense and how are we going to use this space and how much do you want to invest, and these bigger questions that are going to resonate, and forget about popular, just fit you. Okay, decisions with more confidence. You know that we talked about why and what. We've harped on that ad nauseum. But really, I can go into something tomorrow with something that I got to do and forget the big picture, and I find myself spinning my wheels and frustrated. And it happens time and time again, so we have to stay on this. But why are you doing this, and what are you trying to achieve? You summarize that, what you're trying to achieve. If you can do it in 3 to 7 words, so much the better. You kind of create yourself a little rallying cry. That's one of the exercises in the book. And from there, you can just say why you're doing it. Then you build out your no list. No to this, no to that, however many they are. You can say, yeah, you know, I'm good with that. Bang, bang, bang. You shut the doors. Great. You move on with your decision. Okay, so we kind of touched on style already. The one thing a big thing that we get with people is they'll come in and they'll just be frustrated as all get out. They're like, man, I wanted to be building 2 months ago, and here I am now. now you're suggesting we roll back the thing more and dink with roof lines and make things good. And I don't know if I can handle it. I don't want to get going. Real. Yeah, it's real stuff. I get it. So for you moving forward, the one thing that I would offer up is that just like a tree, before it goes up, it builds a gazillion roots before you get vertical growth. That line right here, all the paper scratching, all the planning, all the thinking, all of that. If you want a strong, healthy tree, how can you get there without building roots first, without going through the planning? And you're going to spend a chunk of money on this as well. So patience and planning. And then once you do that work with the root building, these questions won't come up as much. You won't like go to do, like say, for example, here's an example of not enough root growth. In a small way, I ask client X, hey, what kind of stain are we looking for? Oh, I'll get that. Yeah, just send me a link or whatever, some samples, and I'll get a color. Well, 5 days later, I'm calling up, hey, stain color. Oh, yeah, well, you see, what happened is we decided, we better match the stone, the countertops, and the stone in the cabinets. And so we're trying to make a choice there so that we can do, and then we're rolling back. And a lot of times, if the bigger picture of what you're trying to achieve isn't ironed out, that is, you're trying to answer big questions to get to what stain is right. And so that's an example of, if the root growth is there, these questions are not going to crop up like whack-a-mole as you're moving forward with the whole building process, where you're making fast decisions under fire with little research. Just a little time at the start. It's a good thing. So I think we're all done here. Thank you very much.